Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I'm your host, Marc Guberti, the content marketing expert, bringing you 5 new episodes every week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. Hello, Breakthrough Success listeners. I just wanted you all to know before the episode actually starts, I've been working a little bit behind the scenes to give you something really special. So a while ago, I wrote my book, Content Marketing Secrets, which helps people create, promote, and optimize their content for growth and revenue. And I just put the finishing touches together to offer that for free to anyone who is interested. So if you want your free copy of Content Marketing Secrets, all you have to do is head over to marcguberti.com/book. Now, let's jump right into the episode. Have you ever wondered what goes into making a website popular? What goes into massive growth? What goes into a website being able to generate revenue? Well, we have the answers for you in this episode because that's what we're going to talk about. What makes a website popular and how can we make our existing websites get a high level of traffic? So today's guest is the CEO of Overflow Cafe, which specializes in making websites popular. He has 23 years of business experience and 4 successful startups under his belt. He started working at the age of 7 doing door-to-door candy sales to support his family. Since then, he has helped build 14 orphanages worldwide and continues to make websites popular with Overflow Cafe. So who exactly is today's guest? Well, today's guest for episode 232 of the Breakthrough Success podcast is none other than Jeff Hall. Jeff, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Jeff, I'm really happy that you're on the show because we all want to grow our traffic. We all want more people to hear about our brands. We all want more people on our websites. And when it comes to making a popular website, that's just something that so many people want to do. We'll talk about that in this episode. But before we do that, I'd like to get some background. So can you just share with us a little bit why you started Overflow Cafe and just a little bit behind that story?
Yeah, actually, I was back in 1995. My family, we were going to be evicted from our home, and we needed to come up with a certain amount of money. It was several $1,000s in back payments. My parents weren't especially good with money. They were earning a good income, but they didn't manage that income very well. And so I guess something happened with the rent money for a couple months. So I said, you know what, I'll do my part. I'll see what I can do. Now, I had already been bringing in several $100s a month, for years and years and years, all the way back to the age of 7. But at this stage, I needed to come up with something that would bring in at the time, what I thought was a huge sum of money, several $1,000s in just a very short amount of time. And so the one thing that I was really good at, that I could charge a lot of money for, was computer-related stuff. And so I started this thing. I went to people that I knew and I said, hey, it's 1995. Websites were very simple. They were just, we had one page with some words on it. Maybe you had an animated dancing hamster or something like that. It wasn't very sophisticated at all. And, most people, at least in this area of Toronto, we had dial-up internet. And my first customer, one of my first customers, if not the very first, was this Kung Fu instructor. And I knew him, and he says, Jeff, I'm really interested. We have a web page. How can we get new students signing up for classes, or at least coming for a tour of the Kung Fu school through the website? I said, okay, leave that to me. And so I worked on that for a couple of weeks. And one day instructor calls me up and he says, wow, we got X number of people called, and then out of that number, a bunch of people showed up, and a bunch of people signed up. And from that, I was able to, I think I traded that actually for Kung Fu lessons, not money, as far as I remember right now. But I was able to leverage that into how to price this and how to get a ton of new clients. And we managed to save the house, and Overflow Cafe was born.
It's amazing, what the internet was like at that time. I mean, I wasn't even alive in 1995, so yeah. I can only imagine how different the internet was then as compared to now. And now websites are a lot more complicated. You have blogs, you have some websites that just focus more on a landing page. So it's so many different capabilities we have now, and so many different strategies and directions to take. What typically goes into making a website popular?
What I like to tell people is you start off with a really good audit, a detailed audit. Just like if you were getting your finances in order, you want to know where you currently stand. So you have a website. It's either fully complete or it's not complete, but you start with an audit. And the audit establishes some facts. Where you're ranking, what your website load speed is, how many visitors you currently have, what keywords are performing really well, what's performing poorly, where are your visitors leaving your website, how long are they spending on your website? And then from there, we know what we could do. We could establish a plan from there, because some clients come to us and they say, oh, I want to be number one for this phrase. And we'll show them, look, you are number one for that phrase. You don't need us. Or they're number one for that phrase and it's not making them any money. Or they want to be number one for a phrase that's ridiculous. We had a client who said, oh, I want to be number one for the keyword water worldwide. And one of our team members said, "Sir, we can't do that. We're the wrong company to call. We're not going to be able to help you with that. And we can't even, normally if we can't help you, we'll recommend you to a company who can. We couldn't even think of anyone who we could recommend them to." And he was selling a household water filter, and he was only selling it to a certain state in America, and he would bring it to you and install it into your home. And so he was so upset. And so I got on the phone with him. And I said, "Sir, let me explain something to you. We're at step one. You signed up with us. We're at step one where we're doing this audit. And you don't need to rank number one on planet Earth for water. You need to rank in, a couple cities for water filters, and I gave him a list of keywords that would make him a lot of money, get him a lot of customers." And he was so upset. He said, no, I want to rank worldwide for water. And he's basically hung up the phone and he canceled his account with us. So yeah, you start with a good audit. It tells you where you are, and then from there you can really build around that. So yeah, step one is an audit.
And I mean, it's really interesting how you mentioned the keywords and the phrases that people use. It's not completely straightforward. Like the example you mentioned, it's not like ranking number one for water, or in social media marketing, ranking number one for social media marketing. It could be like social media marketer in New York, or social media marketer in California, or social media marketer in Europe or somewhere else. That's where you rank number one if you're local. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can figure out like what phrases you need to target based on that audit, as Jeff mentioned. And one of the things that, did you mean to say something?
No. Sorry, I was agreeing with you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. One of the things that I want to ask you is that, like, you see, and this isn't just with websites, this is just with businesses in general, but we'll focus on websites. You see a website become really popular, and then it loses its ground. It's no longer popular. It's maybe like a one-hit wonder or something that it's popular briefly and then it goes away. So how can we make our websites, our blogs, our content popular and stay popular once they already become popular? What's the plan for staying there?
I feel like that's more of, I feel like that's just business. I see that happen all the time. A website that has, maybe it had a really, really amazing blog post. There was maybe an interview, or there was just something that was so interesting and exciting that it ranked number one for that. And then it rode the momentum for maybe a year. And then after a while, it reached saturation. And then that's it. There's no more business to be had. And that's just very, very normal. And trying to figure out a way to then extend that as long as you can, that's one art form. And then trying to keep that going on forever, that's a whole other art form. I mean, there was a time when, for example, the hula hoop was the number one selling toy in the world, and they were selling at premium prices, just a plastic hoop. Now, they're at the dollar store. And so the people who invented them, they made a lot of money, but then, after a while, it sort of goes down and revenues start to drop and people are like, okay, big deal. It is what it is. It's something people buy and then throw away. It really is an art form. That's where your business skills really have to come in, because we've seen clients who skyrocket to the top and they still go bankrupt because they're not able to handle the finances. They bring in a ton of revenue, but then they overspend. We had a client who bought cars and luxury goods and stuff like that when their business really picked up. And, it's sad. It's sad to see. Even if we had a great idea for them to sustain their business long term, it wouldn't even really matter because they spent all their money on junk and they wouldn't even have any money to reinvest into their business to sustain it anyways. It's difficult to answer your question, Mark, because businesses spend fortunes on hiring consultants to keep the status quo, to make sure that revenue never falls, to make sure that rankings never fall, and to make sure that sales never fall.
That is a fair answer, and I know that's a question not just for websites, but businesses in general. The hula hoop is a really good example of something that could be really popular and then end up being in the dollar store or something like that. So I do appreciate you giving your insights on that topic. And one of the things that I also want to ask you about is with the websites. There's some people who they're not getting too much traffic. They don't have that big email list, but they're able to generate revenue because of the level of engagement they have with their audiences. So I'm wondering, how can we start to optimize our websites to generate revenue, even if we don't have very large audiences?
Yeah, I think that making yourself available when you have a very small audience helps to accelerate your revenue as fast as possible. So one thing that's worked for me, for our client base, is we tell them, make sure you have an email address on your site. Make sure you have a phone number on your site. Doesn't have to be your cell phone. Get yourself a voicemail system or something like that. And, let people call you, talk to people. And by doing so, you'll get to understand who your customer base is. And once you know who they really are and you understand them, you'll be able to multiply the number of clients that you have. Whereas if you have too many layers of communication separating you and your paying customer, that's okay when you have lots of them. But when you're just starting out and you have a very small user base, you really want to be able to talk to them. Back in the 90s, when Google was just getting started, you could actually send an email to their top level staff and they would respond to you. I sent an email. I can't remember the exact staff member. It wasn't Larry or Sergey, but I sent an email to Google back in the 90s, and they, within just a couple of days, they actually responded to me. Now, they weren't anything back then. They didn't have, people used Yahoo back then. Everybody used Yahoo. Google wanted to be the big guys, but you could email them. Now, you cannot do that today. You cannot email Google like you can't. But it was incredible thinking that, 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, you were able to email them and get in contact with them, and they would respond to you personally.
I like that approach of making yourself more available to people, especially when you have a smaller audience. And when you have a smaller audience, it's just something a lot easier to do. You build loyal fans who will spread the word about you, and you could also grow your audience through your own efforts over time as well, in addition to staying available to your existing audience. So I really like that idea for people who have smaller audiences, and there are different ways to approach that as your audience grows. There may be some delegation involved. It definitely gets harder when you have a larger audience, but when your audience is small, it's very best to be available, because that is the one thing the big brands cannot do for everyone, especially CEOs and the people who start those businesses. And one of the questions I want to ask you is, we've talked about a few ways that can help with making a website popular, but what do you believe holds most people back from being able to build and grow their websites into very popular places for the right people?
I feel like, okay, just so that I answer this question properly, could you clarify?
Oh, sure. So
Sure.
Not all of the websites are popular. What are some of the things that they're doing wrong? Or that
wow.
they could
Well,
do?
yeah, no, I get it. Google uses at least 200 different metrics to rank a website. And so you really should try to pass each and every one of those 200 tests. Some of the basics would be, does your website load quickly? Is your website mobile friendly? Meaning, does it load properly on a cell phone and on a desktop computer, on a tablet? You're going to gain points for that. Does your website have an SSL? You're going to gain points for that. Does your website have, here's a good one. Do you have about 2,000 words on any given page of your website? If you've ever Googled something, you'll notice that not every time, but more than 50% of the time, the page that ranks number one usually has about, if you click on it, it'll have about 2,000 words. Copy and paste it into your word processor, and then, count the words. It'll be 2,000 words plus. And so having 2,000 words of quality, can't be junk, it has to be quality, useful information, will typically land you on the first page of search results. So these are things that you can do very, very easily. And, if you do 2,000 words, Google will say, maybe you're an expert at that thing that you're talking about. And if you are an expert at that thing, you're going to get backlinks. You're going to get people pointing to your content. Other people saying, hey, this person's an expert. Take a look at this. And people will start linking to you on social media and on their blogs and so on and so forth. That's going to further increase your traffic, and it'll solidify your first page rankings. And of course, then it's up to you, going back to, a couple minutes ago, that's up to you monetizing all of that traffic and making as much money as you can, and realizing that maybe that's not going to last forever. And so, don't spend all that money. Save up some of it and be ready, start looking forward to when maybe that traffic's going to die down. Do you need to modify content? One of the biggest things out there now is a lot of business owners, successful business owners, they're not even focused so much on writing brand new blogs. They're focused more so on going back to their old popular blogs and updating them for, the current year, 2018. So if they had a really popular blog in 2015, they'll actually just go back and update it and say, here's the 2018 edition. And it is actually just a copied and pasted 2015 version, and they've added on maybe 1,000 more words. And what ends up happening is they've just reinvigorated that success that they had years ago. And so that's the new trend for 2018.
And I'm also part of that trend because I'm not writing as much new content. I'm focusing more on the existing content because I have I come out with 5 podcast episodes a week. I have over 1,000, I think over 1,600 blog posts on my blog right now. So I've covered a lot of topics. Now it's part of that, just updating some of the existing content, which Jeff pointed out is a big theme for 2018. And I see that continuing even beyond 2018 as well. So a lot of great insights in that answer, especially on the updating your existing content, because that's definitely something that more people are doing. And one of the things that I also want to ask you is, I know with any business, there are several challenges that come along the way. Challenges are just a natural part of the journey. So I'm wondering if you could share with us one big challenge you faced on your journey to growing Overflow Cafe and a powerful lesson you learned during that challenge.
Ooh, one big challenge. I've had hundreds of challenges, but one big challenge. I'll tell you probably my biggest. Like I said at the beginning of our conversation, the company was started and I had to generate revenue immediately. It wasn't, like many people start a company and they say, okay, well, in 6 months, I want to make my first dollar. We're companies these days, they're losing money for the first 4 years, and they don't turn a profit until year 5. And I didn't get to do that. I had to start earning an income immediately and a profit too. And so that was really tragic for me because it meant that my pricing was too low. I had to take on clients that I just didn't want to take on, clients that today I just say no to. And so that was really rough. That was really rough. And the money was going to my family who, they were irresponsible. And if I was in charge of the family finances, we would have never been in that situation in the first place. Whole other story. But that was a really big challenge because even after that fact, once my family figured out that I could bring in, a lot of money every month, then they really depended on me to do that for a long time. And it was years and years and years of me generating money, trying to, support my family and their bad habits until I said, okay, I'm so sorry. I've decided not to do this anymore. I can't help you anymore. What was the second part of that question, Mark?
A powerful lesson you learned during that challenge.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you, this is something I learned the hard way. And I hope all your listeners will really take this to heart. You need to surround yourself with experts, people who are amazing at what they do, and you need to listen to them. There was a time when, I did my income taxes by myself because I said, well, I'm smart enough to do it. Now I have an accountant who handles all of that. And I'll tell you, I feel a lot better having an accountant doing that for me. Have an expert in as many areas of your life as possible, because if it's just a bunch of experts that are surrounding you, you can then focus on your dreams and goals, and you can go for it with confidence, and you'll get there a lot faster. And when you do get there, you'll actually be able to enjoy what you've gained, and you won't have to lose everything that you've gained. And I think we've all heard about people who, they've gained a huge fortune and then they've lost it all because they did something foolish. And then you look at the people who they surrounded themselves with, and they weren't surrounded by experts. They were surrounded by crooks. And then they lost everything that they ever gained. And it's heartbreaking and it's tragic. So surround yourself with experts and people who have your best interests at heart, and you'll do very well, and you'll get to enjoy it.
And just to go a little deeper into that, a popular quote from Jim Rohn, it's something that frequently lands its way on Breakthrough Success episodes, but you are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So if you're surrounding yourself with experts, it won't be too long before you become an expert in the area as well. So just something to keep in mind if this is the first time you've heard the quote from Jim Rohn. If it's not the first time, it is always a very good reminder to continue to think about. And the reason I know that about Jim Rohn, that was his quote, is because I read a lot of books. And some months I'll read well over 10 books, depending on the month. But with books in mind, Jeff, I'm wondering if you could share with us 3 great books that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
3 good books. Okay, so one that I finished not too long ago, Arnold Schwarzenegger wrote, I don't know if I even pronounced his last name properly there, but he wrote a book. It's also one of his movie titles, but he wrote a biography. It's an autobiography called Total Recall. And he describes his life growing up and the first couple of businesses that he started. And it's unbelievable. You would never know that he was that smart. You would absolutely never know that he was that smart. And the book is like over 700 pages. And he just made a fortune in real estate long before he got into acting. His work ethic is unbelievable. At first I only knew him really as a movie star and a bodybuilding champion. And actually, he is an extraordinarily successful business person. He knows a lot about real estate. At one point, he even owned part of an airline. But yeah, definitely, I would highly recommend that book. I've actually purchased copies of it to give away to people. There's another book. It's by a singer, a musician named Jewel. And the book is called Never Broken. Now, Never Broken describes her journey where she was a homeless teenager. She grew up in Alaska and she wanted to make it big as a musician. And she just really struggled with parents that didn't care. And she just would play music for whoever would listen. And she made it really, really, really big. And her mom ended up scamming her of all her money and taking her down to not just zero, but deep into debt. Wow. And so her mom crushed her dreams, and then she had to start all over again from scratch. It's an incredible book. Let me see, a third one. Well, I don't know too much about the listeners today, but I'm going to go ahead and recommend whether you love him or hate him, any business book by Donald Trump. He writes some of the most effective business literature that I've ever read. And his early works were just absolutely amazing. They're so honest. And if you like honesty and just good hard facts, it's hard to beat any of his early works.
Jeff, thank you for those book recommendations. We will include all of those books in the show notes, markguberti.com/E232. One of the books we will also include in the show notes, Content Marketing Secrets. So if you want to create, promote, and optimize your content for growth and revenue, you can grab that book free, plus just pay for shipping. Again, that's markguberti.com/book. And before we wrap up this episode, Jeff, I've asked you several questions throughout our time together, but what do you believe is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
If I was to die today, has it all been worth it? Everything that I've been struggling daily towards, has it all been worth it? I think that question helps us to remember that there will be an end, and all this stuff that we're doing, hopefully it is meaningful to us in the end.
Jeff, thank you for sharing with us that great question and all of the great insights throughout our time together. If you guys want to learn more about Jeff, see what he is doing, head over to overflowcafe.com, which will be in the show notes. But Jeff, I can't thank you enough for sharing all of your great insights with us. It was such a pleasure to have you on Breakthrough Success.
Thanks, Marc.
How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn